also becomes very boring when I'm following exactly what the director is saying or telling me or has briefed me. And given the society and the situation that we are surrounded with right now, nothing seems to be like passing through. Basically, जहाँ पे लगा कि नौकरी मिल जाएगी वहीं पे गए. So that's how I went into editing by chance. You've just become my favorite person in the world because you have asked me about Taandav. Nobody asks me about Taandav, and
Hello everyone, my name is Porush, and in this new episode of the Long Live Cinema Show, I got the chance to interact with Shweta Venkat Mathew, who is mostly known for editing Gangs of Wasseypur Part 1 and Part 2, but she has also edited films like Bhonsle, Taandav, Natkhat, Haseen Dilruba, Newton, and many more. This conversation led to a lot of discussion around how films are edited, how certain edit choices have to be limited sometimes, how much violence is too much violence, especially while showing it in a film, and what all decisions are taken by an editor, how the footage is managed. And we also touched upon films like Tandav and Bhosle, specific questions that I had about the editing choices in those films. And we also touched upon Gangs of Wasipur as well. So please watch this podcast till the end, and you will have a great, great time. I can promise you that. Without any further delay, let's sit back, relax, and start the show. So I would like to first start with like a thought that I had, and this is something which which is just which has been there most of the time, but I kind of recollected it recently that when we talk about the art form of cinema itself, cinema, whatever we see today, whatever has been done today in this art form, is primarily somehow because of editing. Like we can say that the art form of cinema has evolved and kind of took birth because there was someone who compiled images, videos, and sounds in order to create a narrative, in order to create something which made sense emotionally. So I would love to know your thoughts on this because editing is something that right now is getting a lot of attention, especially when you see YouTube comments, when we have trailers, whenever there are discussions on Twitter or on Facebook or any other social media platform. Editing is that one aspect which seems to be getting more attention now. Like people are not just focused on the acting, they are also talking about cinematography, they are also talking about acting of editing. So I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Unfortunately, so everybody on the street is talking about editing, and which is great. But the misconception is that they associate editing with the length of the film. That's the most popular misconception people have. How boring it is. It was too slow, or kuch samajh mein nahi aaya. It kind of narrows down to that. Unfortunately, that's what the common man talks about is that's their knowledge of editing, and you can't blame them. I mean, an experience that they're having, and editing is something which kind of guides and kind of enhances or does the opposite to the experience you're having while watching a film or any content. Yes, I would say that uh, for me, we are all in like a movie, like a small little movie that, we're all existing in. So the way I think even editing originated is all because of somebody observed it. Like people and filmmakers of that time observed life around them. So when I'm talking to you, I'm looking at your reaction. And so that is basically what I'm editing it in my head, right? I'm just looking at your reaction, you're looking at my reaction, and the timing at which if I say something, you laugh. All that is editing. I mean, it all boils down to that. And that is what we try and bring out in films or whatever kind of, programs that we edit. So I would say editing is happening all around us as we speak, right? It's just by observing things around you, is what I would say. Um, Taking what you are seeing around you and kind of putting it on screen, yes, that takes a little bit of technique and art, and it all boils down to your experiences and your inherent rhythm of how you react to things and how you think you want people to react to that, that you can manipulate. Yeah, so
Yes, and this is the like the observation of your real life is in fact, we are telling stories because stories or cinema are a reflection of our lives, and like you rightly said that whatever we notice, yeah, this is actually a good perspective that we are all in a movie. We are, living our lives like that. We are all having our own narratives, and yeah, that's definitely something.
we all have a
Yes,
little
that's definitely.
timelines. We all have a little timelines that we are running, on, and then sometimes we intersect and sometimes we part. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to a very different space, but that's what it is. It's like how we are reacting to each other, right? And that is what is brought out on screen.
So we were just talking about editing, and now I would like to proceed to the work that you do, and that is like something that I would like to know from you first is how do you navigate between receiving suggestions from the storytellers, and they can include the directors, the producers, and other people who are involved in the project, and then balancing it with putting your creative contribution to a project. How does that balancing act happens when you are working on a project?
The process of collaborating with someone while you're editing a film can be pretty frustrating because, whenever you do a project, you're so emotionally invested and you feel that this is a certain way that, the story should be told. What I do is that I kind of um, tell myself this is not my film. This is a story the director wants to say, right? It's not my story. So keeping that in mind, that's my first rule. This is not my story. Of course, I'm going to aid and I'm in my best way possible and give whatever suggestions I can. But at the end of the day, it's I'm telling somebody else's story, and I have to understand that I have to try and see it from his or her perspective and help that person out. Once that is out of the way, things become easier. um, Sometimes when you're editing like a scene or something, right, I mean, you try and change a few things around, which is slightly different from the screenplay. The way you are probably approaching a scene from a different perspective than what's written on paper. Sometimes, and you're so excited about it, and sometimes the directors really, appreciate that. They try and see where you're coming from, and and they're very excited about the prospect. But sometimes, even if you feel you have done, like, you cracked a brilliant idea, it might not always kind of, what do you call, people might not always take it because that's not how they have perceived that particular scene, or that film. So it's a bit of balance between, sometimes really like annoying, like, I want to say, why don't you see my point of view, but then that's not my story and it's not my film to make. So I have to kind of take a step back and allow the person to do it the way he or she wants it to. uh, it's very you feel that you've cracked an amazing idea at times, and you feel so good about yourself. Sometimes people see that, but also that might not necessarily be best for the film. So it's a lot of jamming, a lot of kind of back and forth, trying to see reason. Again, it all boils down to life experiences. What I might have a certain perspective on that particular scene, you might have another perspective on it. So everything boils down to what our emotions are, what our feelings are, and what our life experiences are.
Right, right. So like what would you suggest or what would you recommend, let's say, what are your expectations when a director is collaborating with you and you are invited to a project as an editor? So what is something that you look forward to from a director when you are onboarded on a project?
The number one thing I look forward to while collaborating with a director, you know whom I haven't worked with previously, or any director, is their total involvement to the subject at hand, right? I mean, if you see a director who's very excited about the material that he has, then you that kind of that energy, you feed off that energy, and you become equally excited and passionate about it. But when you see directors who are using you merely as a tool to kind of save their projects, and their investment and their emotional investment is not that's very demoralizing even for the rest of the crew ki ha chal jayega, okay. But you are feeding off each other's energy in any project. I mean, you're feeding off energy, even the cameraman, the excitement that he brings towards the project, then the rest of the team feel motivated, right? So I think that's the biggest there are directors whom I've worked with who care no less. It's okay if it happens this way or that way, then you become very emotionally unattached to the whole thing. So whatever you do is okay, which is also a little, there's no challenge there then, But then, fortunately, I've been working with directors who are so passionate about the story that they want to say, right? And they give you the freedom to try out the stuff, the way you look at it. It also becomes very boring when, I'm following exactly what the director is saying or telling me or has briefed me. So it's what can I do to elevate that scene, and how do I see things a lot differently from the director mostly. And again, like, coming back to a previous point, there is a lot of back and forth discussion, arguments. I wouldn't say fights, but arguments, and discussing about how we need, to approach a particular scene. So that is a good thing. A good argument is a very motivating thing to, for you to do a film. Otherwise, it can get very boring. It's a very solitary job, right? So it can get extremely demotivating.
Uh, okay, you just mentioned something, and I was about to ask you something else, but you just mentioned it's a solitary job. Why do you say that?
See, it's a solitary job simply because of reason. The people are generally, when edit happens, it takes place alongside when a shoot is taking place. So there are about, say, 200 people on the set, but there are only two people in an edit room, right? And you're only looking at the only characters you are interacting with are the ones on your screen. There is no human interaction on a day to day basis. You are just looking at the screen, and your engagement is with the people on screen who are not talking back at you. You're listening to them, you're watching them. You're most of the time it's very silent in the edit room. It's only when maybe the director walks in or the producer walks in and sits with you, then it becomes fun. Otherwise, it's a very solitary job. Imagine sitting in the room the whole day. Most rooms don't have windows, right? So you're sitting in a dark room the whole day, not talking to anyone, but only kind of, engaging with people on screen. It's a one-way process. So that way, it's pretty much a solitary job.
Okay, so and when you say rooms, so do you sometimes go on location, or do you like always receive the footage? Like, do you have this permanent editing workstation space where no matter where the film is happening, you will always receive the footage only at that place? Or sometimes, like, please correct me if I'm wrong. I was watching one of your conversations, and you mentioned that you had to be there on set, I guess, when Gangs of Wasseypur was happening, so you were constantly also like checking the footage and editing. So is that the case?
No, actually, Gangs of Wasseypur, I was never on set. I have never been on set.
Okay,
Like,
okay,
actually, any of my films except for Unchai, I have never been on set. And I prefer not to go on set simply because um, my engagement, visual engagement, is only confined to what I see on the frame, in the frame. I don't want to know what is happening outside of it, right? When I'm editing it, that's all I'm seeing. I'm seeing the screen. I don't know what is going on, whether the actor has not got the correct costumes, or whether the cameraman had to put three extra lights to, light up the road, and how much effort has gone into lighting up the street or lighting up a shot which is redundant in the film eventually. Now
right.
that information, if I have, I might be very partial we took a lot of time, and a lot of money went into lighting up the street, and maybe we should have that shot, but I know it's doing nothing to the film. I don't need that information. So that's primarily the reason why I don't go on set. Though I love to travel, and I would love to see set, but this kind of it's like a impairs me when I'm doing my job. When people want on location editing, for the purpose of on location editing, to see the coverage that they have done, then I send my team. Otherwise, it's a very exhausting process. So what happens is, when people are shooting, they make sure they send me the material on a regular basis, so that I'm watching it and lining it up at the same time, and I'm telling my the crew that, okay, this is what is needed. And they said, okay, can you please line up these scenes, because there's a big set that has been constructed. So we want, before we break that down, we just want to make sure you've got everything. So that's how we work. So only set I would say I've been to is on Unchai for Surat Bajatya. That too because I thought I was expected to edit on location, but this was such an interesting experience, because the team said, no, we don't want you editing on location. What they said was, why don't you come along, because you're working with Suraji for the first time, which is true, right? You work with so many directors, and then there's Suraji there, and you do not know what to expect. So all I had to do was watch him, collaborate with him, provide any suggestions if he needed it. And I just had to watch him work and understand the way he works. And that helped me a lot, because then I understood the person he is, the rhythm with which he, approaches scenes. And that I kind of, imbibed and took it to my work. And that's how we work. So it was just 2 weeks of pure observation and learning, which was so refreshing. Now, not many people do. Many people want the scene like 2 ghante mein de do. But this one was like, just watch how we work, watch, understand the rhythm, so that you get into like line, which is a very good thing. So yeah.
Right. Right, that's beautiful actually, because you are there on a project right from the very, like, right from the moment when someone says cut, you know exactly how the shot was taken. So probably you can also have this frame inside your, no pun intended, but frame inside your head that how am I going to assemble it eventually, and how, what are the possible permutations that can be done in order to fulfill that emotional requirement of a scene. I was researching something and I was working on something, and I was watching a lot of conversation scenes. And there is, like, I'm not demeaning any viewer, but I just, with because of that time that I spent on researching, I realized that there is so much that goes behind just editing a conversation scene. And in order to make it enticing or emotional, like the best example is of Social Network, the opening of Social Network. When you see the making of that scene and the kind of edits that were done, you are simply mind blown. So, I would love to know from you, like, how do you proceed with editing a conversation scene, and how do you choose to give a stay or switch between different characters who are talking? How do you, like, decide the time period, or when do you choose to cut, और कि अच्छा अब ये बात कर रहे हैं तो हम अब इन पे switch करेंगे? So, what, how is it that how do you proceed with a conversation scene?
It's a very interesting thing you're asking me, because what I'm doing right now is all conversation scenes for the project that I am working on now.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Everything comes down to the script, the written material, right? If I have a conversation scene at hand, I first make it a point. Though I have read the script before, I make it a point to just go through that scene, right? It's easy to edit a conversation scene. You are talking, I'm talking, another person's watching. But what is the scene about? It all comes down to that. What is the scene about? What is it trying to say? And who is the scene about? If there are if there are three people in a conversation, and two people are talking, sometimes the silent observer is the person the scene is written for, and one has to understand that that motive. What is the motive of the scene? So It's easy to cut. You talk, I reply, I talk, you reply, I react. But at what point? What is the reaction you want the audiences to feel? Again, it all comes down to two things: written material and observing people around you. So if I want to stay longer on a reaction of a certain person, I'm trying to make the audience feel for that person. If I'm delaying a cut, if I'm talking to you, right? But if and you're listening to me, and if you're looking at me, you're listening to me, I stay on you for a beat extra. You think it's going to cut to the other person, that would be the correct cut. But if I stay on you beat extra, maybe I'm manipulating the audiences into feeling for you a little bit more. It could be, I can, maybe there's an anger boiling in within you, or maybe there's some kind of sympathy for you, whatever it is, right? It all boils down to who is the scene meant for. And if you have that clarity, then it becomes very easy. Then sometimes you are just, people are talking but you're actually on other people, because they are the ones reacting. The spoken word is not important, but what you need to land on, who you need to land on, and the emotion you need to land on is the most important thing. So keeping that in mind, then it becomes clearer. So see, when I'm editing conversation scene, I mean all that what I'm saying, huh? When I question why do I need to cut, when do I need to cut, do I really need to cut? Now all this while you're editing, you're not leaving everything. Acha, abhi main kaatu. We're not thinking so much. It all comes organically because you're reacting to the scene at hand. So it's not like I sit and think, okay, abhi main kaatu ki nahi kaatu. But when you're editing, it's like you need to know what is the purpose of the scene and who is the scene for. These are two things which is very important. And what is the emotion that you want to bring out. So wo pakad ke that, keeping that in mind, ki you start cutting a conversation, and you hold on to characters or situations sometimes when you feel that, okay, you want to make the audience uncomfortable, or you want to make the audience kind of feel for that person by just holding on. So these things come with a lot of trial error and revisiting scenes. I mean, it might not come in the first shot itself. So it comes organically.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that this mostly comes while you are watching the edit multiple times. You have, let's say, you have cut it once, and now you're watching it again, and then you feel like, no,
Mhm.
maybe we can do this, and then you watch it again.
Sometimes, I would say 9 out of 10 times it happens while you're cutting it. Uh, it's when you're watching it again, you start getting fatigued also. Then you're not able to see beyond what's there. So, but yeah, sometimes you give it a completely different spin. You say, okay, let me just do this, right? Let me just, like, I remember there was a scene in Newton where it wasn't a conversation, but there was a chase sequence between Rajkumar and the guys. He takes the EVM machine and he starts running, and these guys are chasing him. He runs. So we cut it for a chase, and then we suddenly realize, okay, why are we doing this? It's becoming like a regular chase sequence. Why don't we just stick to Raj's character? Because he's the person. He's so frustrated, and he wants to do this thing, and we just stayed with him, right? And that emotion rendered very differently. Then you felt for him because you're staying with the character. We didn't The other people chasing weren't important. That feeling of him, his desperation, was much more important than the actual chase, the cool chase cuts that we had done in the earlier draft. So these things also, again, like you say, you revisit and you say, okay, let me try this and see what works. So trial and error, nothing else. It's just that's what it is.
Right, right. Something also that fascinates me a lot, especially since I have been driving my curiosity towards how cinema is made and everything, is aspect ratio. Aspect ratio, I believe, is, in my opinion, decides the perception of the story for a viewer. So, can you please help us understand what is the importance of aspect ratio, especially coming from you, who actually, edits a story, assembles it, and I believe aspect ratio is something that you have to ultimately decide.
You know, I don't think, I mean, sorry if I'm not giving the right answer here, but I don't think I look at aspect ratio while editing at all. I don't. Yes, aspect ratio for the ultimate whatever viewing in terms of how you perceive the story, and yes, all that is there. I mean, when you start shooting a film, the cameraman along with the director have decided that there's a certain aspect ratio they want to bring about the story, you know. But why am I editing? I'm not even bothered about the aspect ratio. I'm not. For me, again, like I said, I just look at the characters, I look at the situation. For me, aage piche, what is when the aspect ratio comes in, yeah, there are things when you kind of manipulate in terms of shifting the frame here and there to see whether you're able to get everything. But it is important. I'm not saying it is important, but while editing, for me, I do not bother. In fact, I'm very known for not looking at a lot of problems on the screen. I have not seen. I'm only looking at what is happening. But it is eventually for the final experience. It is important. But while editing, I do not really care about aspect ratio. Yeah. Sorry, I don't think I gave the right answer, but yeah, this is what it is. I mean, I yeah, because for me personally, it doesn't matter. Eventually, if I have to show it to someone, I then check what is this aspect ratio. They say okay, it's 16:1, 185, whatever. Then we accordingly we reframe. But the edit remains the same for me. It's not going to be any different.
Okay, okay, got it. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
So
ask,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there is one editing choice that I absolutely like, as in when I watch films and I discover it, I absolutely love it when there is a scene that is happening or a moment, a particular moment, and there is a song that plays in the background, which is not from that film, but it just creates a certain kind of contrast or a feeling, something like the example that I instantly remember is Andaz Apna Apna, when Amir Khan is jailed because of Salman Khan's small trick that he plays,
Yeah.
and then the song that plays is Papa Kehte Hain Bada Naam Karega, which
Mm.
makes so much of sense because Amir Khan's first film, and that that song was a highlight, and it is also kind of creating a contrast with the scene itself. So I would love to
Mm.
know from you, are there any editing choices like these that you personally love to incorporate in stories? Of course, you have to ensure that like you said, that the director's vision, the storyteller's vision
Mm.
is ultimately conveyed. But from your end, do you have some of these added choices that you like to do? Ki haan yaar, this just I really love.
Oh, my favorite part of editing and assembling, like making a film, is sound design. So it could be music, it could be sound effect, it could be just background, sound effects and background music, whatever. And sometimes it just comes naturally. So there are times when the scene is working by itself, and but just these added layers of one sound from somewhere, it might not belong to a scene. So there are two kinds of sound, like there's a diegetic sound and a non-diegetic sound. A diegetic is which like you can see, it's there in this scene, in the source you can see. A non-diegetic is not there. I mean, you don't see the source, but you know it's somewhere around you, right? So you use sound to kind of what do you call play with the scene and see where you enhance the humor or emotion. My favorite part is where I don't know, there's this film called Meri Pyari Bindu, right, and which we had worked on. And there is a scene where Ayushman, I think his parents land up and he's busy clearing bottles, and wakes up his friends who are sleeping, and then suddenly he goes around clearing up the mess in his room, and he opens a door and you see one big, like dark looking man who's a complete stranger to him standing in his house. He's just coming out of the bathroom. The scene was very funny when we written, we edited it was funny, but it was just not landing. So what I did was, I just put, like, as the door opens, I just put a fart sound, right? It just looked, that guy looked completely wasted and like he's standing like a zombie. So that gave a like a different meaning, and it gave a different reaction, and people started actually laughing, and suddenly the scene worked. So it's just that these little things that you do, maybe you just had birds chirping somewhere, or and like you said in Andaz Apna Apna, they added Papa Kehte Hain, which was a very literal, literally underlining the emotion and saying that this is ye hai, right? So it's not easy to do the soundtracks now, because I mean people have to pay exorbitant amount for rights and stuff like that. If they can, they do. But it's so much fun creating, and thinking about sounds that might just kind of give a body to the scene, and as well as enhance a little bit of emotion and humor. So, like the biggest example is, I think, in Godfather, when I remember our sessions with Walter Murch in the institute when where I was studying. He had come over and he gave us a little bit of a lecture. So, how there's a scene between forgetting a scene between Michael Corleone. He's about to kill the famous assassination scene in the cafe, right? And there is this sound of the train which is going. You don't see the train, and that adds to the tension. So these are things, these are techniques that you pick up from people, and you kind of add it wherever you can. So these things are so much fun. I love sound design. It's one of my favorite departments.
Got it. Got it. You were talking about sound, and I actually would love to ask you about the editing of Taandav, because Taandav, that short film, and I was very, very, very fortunate to meet Devashish just on Saturday, this Saturday. He is here in Delhi, and again, Anukampa helped to connect both of us, and today I'm speaking to the editor of his film. So, uh, Taandav is a film that, in my opinion, relies heavily on music. So I would love to, know from you if you can take us back to those sessions when you were editing the film. What kind of the mindset that you guys have had, and because ultimately I feel that the sound of celebration turns into like a cacophony of chaos because of the editing, and our entire story is happening right in the middle of the Ganpati celebration. So how was it like editing the film, and how did you, incorporate the sound? And because it just the film just the film is fun, because thanks to Nuclear's music, how it makes you feel, but then it's also very chaotic. So I would love to know how was it like editing the film, and how did you proceed with it?
You've just become my favorite person in the world because you have asked me about Taandav. Nobody asks me about Taandav and the making of Taandav, because I Taandav is a film so close to my heart, because there are things which I've tried in it, and it's so difficult to explain to people your thought process and all that. I mean, which is great. Not everybody is expected to ask you and understand. So I saw the rushes of Tandav, and Devashish had briefed me. This is what he wanted in terms of the chaos and I think the inspector's head and all that. So script is very relatively very simple. So and he had shot tons and tons of footage of Ganpati Visarjan in Bombay. So the idea was to have fun with it. Now there were two ways to go about it. One was to kind of cut it to music, which is easy, but I said, let's, while you're shooting a scene, you also have the sound with it that comes with it. So I said, let's just build the chaos using the sound that is there in the shot, right? It has to be chaotic. So if there's drums playing, people shouting, trumpets being played, some DJs playing music. So let's use the sounds that you have recorded with the shot and just cut it like, very chaotically. So I said, let's do that. Let's create first the chaos with sound, and then let's just put the visuals. So I took different sound, what do you call, pieces from the shots itself, and then kind of just lined them together and then put the shots. So that kind of created that chaos. It's that dirty, unsettling chaos, which kind of irritates you. So that was our motive, like, and that is what is in the character's mind as well. That pressure builds up, and then suddenly the sound is sucked out. So all those are conscious decisions, and that was designed in the edit table. And of course, Kamo, the sound designer, kind of took it to another level. But editing, that was so much fun because we only edited with respect to sound, keeping sound in mind. And after that, when you go into real life situation, there is also a portion where he's watching. I think the daughter's watching Tom and Jerry cartoon, and there's a pressure cooker. So here there was a pressure cooker sound in the kitchen, which is also adding to the pressure, and there is a sound of the cartoon in the background which is laughing at this character. So all those are very thought out decisions at the edit table, like, let's have this Tom react in such a way where he's so these sounds are playing on him, adding to his pressure, and then he explodes, and the music only comes in the end. The music becomes a character in the end. Till then you are just with all these sounds in the. So I think it was such a joy and such an interesting project to work on and try out things. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. He gave me complete freedom, so it was amazing.
it
Yeah.
it was very evident, trust me, it was very evident. And sometimes I feel that the true the true heroes of a film or story are the editors, because
Mm.
editors are, you know they are taking charge of how someone will feel at the end of watching a film or a story or a series, a documentary, whatever is the format. And Taandav is a glorious example of the same. I'm a sucker for sound design, and I absolutely love it. And Taandav, just like I said, Taandav was fun in the end because of Nuclear's music and how it ends. But when it is happening, it's so chaotic, and it just reminded me of the films of the Safdie brothers, how they create chaos, how they incorporate chaos. Like, I recently watched Good Time. I very late to the party, but I watched Good Time recently, and then you have Uncut Gems and all these films which just creates so much of chaos. And I it just baffles me how you assemble, how you choreograph, and how you assemble that chaos. And so there is this moment in Tandav. So when the film begins, uh, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just here to learn from you. So when he is observing the procession that is taking place, the celebration, the sound is a little muffled, I guess.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then it just it feels like, yeah, okay, this is the actual sound that you hear. And I think that muffling has been done to depict his mindset. He Sometimes I feel Tandav is a prequel to Bhosle, because वो Bhosle.
It was. It was. It was. It was. Devashish, if I'm not wrong, had Bhosle written as a script, but before that, he made this Tandav as a precursor because I think he was still trying to put that project together. Then he made this as a precursor, and that's how this guy is a precursor to Bhosle.
That's great. That's great. So
Yeah.
how I would like, can you help me define what did you guys actually do? Like, when you muffle that sound, what is that muffling? Is that an effect, or how do you bring it down and then you elevate it?
See, I think the muffled effect per se, I think the sound designer would be a better guy to tell you how he did that. But the idea behind it, I know, is that because Inspector Tambe, played by Manoj Bajpayee, Inspector Tambe is this person who has been suppressed all his life. The pressure is getting to him. He's just dubbed everywhere by society, by his family. So when you kind of compress everything, everything becomes like, it's like a bomb waiting to explode. So everything was muffled, and it's kind of the stress was building up in his brain, and then the release happens. So that was the whole idea, right? So everything, even when we are, I think, zooming into him, everything was slow, and suddenly he looks right. And that was the whole idea of that, his release, to land on his release, like, was the idea. So everything kind of worked around that.
Great,
So
great.
yeah.
And yeah, and speaking about Devashish films, and we just spoke of Bhosle, mentioned Bhosle. So and I revisited Bhosle again. I just love to watch films that leave a lump in my throat. I don't know the kind of crazy person I am, but they like I want to talk to you about that montage with which the film begins, how you are drawing that parallel between Ganpati and Ganpat Bhosle by you have this montage which just I actually read about it. I'm not able to remember the term, but uh, you are trying to establish that parallel of how uh, like when he's taking off his belt, you are combining it with how a thread is being tied around the statue, and when he's taking off his pin, so you are then showing how the ornaments are being tied. So he's removing those stuff, but then on the other hand, things are being added on the Ganpati idol. So what was your what was that idea that you guys had when you thought of, okay, we'll start this film with a montage, and how what were you guys imagining and trying to achieve with the montage that was included?
See, I'll tell you what, in Bhosle, it was completely Devashish's brilliance. The beginning sequence was all written by him. And of course, he got those shots the way he wanted. Um, I remember vaguely remember reading the script, but I don't know. It was so much in detail. It was described. It was just described that Ganpati is getting decorated and this guy is. But these details I got to know only when I saw the rushes, and I think it's brilliant. It's full credit to him. But editing those scenes were tricky because on one hand you are celebrating and decorating or adorning one entity, and the other one is kind of on his way out. So that contrast, to create a contrast, of course visually it was shot so beautifully, but just to kind of get a rhythm was very difficult because it can't be too fast, it can't be too slow, it just has to look real and just correct. So pacing Bhosle was extremely tough, the whole film. But my favorite part in Bhosle, which happened just by serendipity, was the last shot where Bhosle is lying in the bathroom, and then you have this Ganpati in the water. That just happened by chance. It wasn't planned, and I think there's something divine there because the way we started the film is also the way we ended the film. It wasn't meant to be. It just happened. As we put the shots together, that's when they also realized, oh my god, this is actually happening. We have a shot of Bhosle lying, and we were always supposed to end it with Ganpati, but we never accounted for Bhosle lying in a similar way in the bathroom, which was an added bonus. So yeah, pacing it and keeping the contrast throughout the film was because Bhosle's rhythm is slow, but Ganpati, the things around that happen around Ganpati is fast. So it was a completely different pace for both.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is thank you. I'm just a huge fan of Bhosle and how the film was made and everything, and it just again leaves a very long-lasting impact on you. And again, the montage and the editing and everything just
In you
comes
know
together. And
in Bhosle, a lot of things happened also while editing by I can't say fluke, but the magic happened while we were putting it together. When the small things, like I think when the girl comes, and I'm not remembering the scene, but when the girl comes, she knocks, and then he's lingering at the door, listening to her, and that wasn't meant to be, but it just happened. We put another shot there, and then it created a completely different emotion of longing and wanting to interact with someone. So these are small things that really was very nice, I mean, which happened on the edit.
that's amazing. I was trying to formulate this question in the best way possible, but I think I should ask you directly. How do you manage your data? Because you have video, you have audio, you have sound effects, you have transitions, you have so many elements coming together on your timeline. So how is all this managed? And of course, now you have worked for so long in the industry, so you are like, I'm sure you are very well versed with the work that you do. But uh, do you also sometimes experience a state of overwhelm when you receive a footage or the data, and then you feel like, okay, this is going to take time and we have to arrange everything and in order to bring it to the timeline. So how is this management happening? Because I have been I'm not a film editor, but I have, you know, I am someone who is making videos, and editing is essentially an essential part of it. And I'm making video essays where, I might have to take footage from other films as well, in order to explain what I'm trying to explain. And then the audio is also there. So sometimes I wonder, wait, if I am facing this much of, what should I say, not issue, but
Yeah.
difficulty at some level. So I just imagine, like, the people like you who edit a series or a film that is, I don't know, 3 hours or even a 2 hour film. How is this management happening? And I would love for you to shed some light on this.
You see, the first and foremost, one has to be extremely organized, right? In before starting editing anything. That's, I mean, these are all what do you call basic, the non-creative part of, you know making a film. But organization is extremely important. So thankfully I have a good team who also does this for me now. But we make sure that everything, when the rushes and the dailies come in every day, everything is numbered, everything is in the respective folders, sound effects, everything has to be extremely organized. And the rule is that if you were to take over in the sense, for any reason, if I'm handing over the project to you, you should be able to find everything without, without any difficulty. So organizing material and scene lineups, everything has to be done in a very, very, what do you call, methodical way. There's no shortcuts to that. Unfortunately, people in the industry don't give us enough time to do that. So we have to work at double the speed to, make sure we are not messing up, because then the post production workflow for later on becomes easier, right? When we have to give things for sound and BGM and all that. So we name the folders, we, do all those, we keep everything organized, and that's extremely important. Getting overwhelmed with the footage happens. It happens. You say, oh my God, there's so much of footage. But then again, take a deep breath, take one thing at a time, right? It's like everything is like, you build everything slowly, slowly, slowly. It cannot happen. So, first thing, there are no shortcuts. You keep building, see the footage, how much of a time it takes for you to see the footage, you see the footage, mark your shots, do that. And that's how you, I remember in one, there was a documentary called Superman of Malegaon, which I had edited. So I was told it's a very small documentary for about half an hour and all that they're going to shoot. But when the first set of footage came, there were about 100 hours. Second set of footage came 50 hours. Eventually, there were, I think, 285 hours of footage. So that I did not know what was going on. But then again, just it was all over the place, and we had just 2 months to, edit the whole thing and give. So then, yeah, again, it organizing it helps, watching it again and again helps, marking your, portions help. All these are like, you need a lot of patience, and you need a good team, to also do this for you, and who are on the same page with you in terms of doing this. So yeah. My desk will be cluttered. Sorry, my desk will be cluttered, but my bins have to be in shape. That is the thing.
Okay, got it. And do you guys have like a rule of thumb before you start editing? Or is it just about organization? Key first organize everything and then we will begin.
Yeah. So organize. Like when the rushes come in, the first thing the team does is organize it. We take about a week to, organize everything, and things keep coming, right? So we kind of form a rhythm. So organization happens, then sound sync happens, then the lineups happen, and then the edit happens. So that's the order we follow. And so, and everybody gets to do everything. So in the sense, like, my team, gets to edit scenes, lineup scenes, and that's what they're there for, right? They need to also be able to, sharpen their knives and edit a scene, and see how it works. So it's a very collaborative effort between my team and I.
Right. Recently, we are witnessing, and not just with Hindi cinema, but Indian cinema in general, we are witnessing non-linear storytelling approach a lot in a lot of films. So I want to understand, like, is editing a non-linear film or a non-linear narrative, like how difficult can it get when you are editing something in a non-linear fashion, and what is something that you have to keep in mind as a rule of thumb, or just, a checklist that, okay, we are going to be non-linear because that's how the story is there. So is there anything that you guys follow specifically when you are editing in non-linear fashion?
Um, Editing a non-linear film is obviously tougher than the one which the story is straight and simple and in a linear fashion. But again, everything has to be scripted. Yeah, if it doesn't work in the script, it will not work in the edit. There's no magic that will. Maybe we might be able to save, and you know, save is the wrong word, but maybe we might be able to hide any deficiencies. But if it is not scripted, if it is not, then it will, there are chances 90% of the time it will not work in the edit. It will stare at you. That's something which will keep bothering you. So again, it has to be scripted correctly. It has to be scripted in a way where, of course, we try out things. In Meri Pyari Bindu, for example, was a non-linear film editor. We kept going back, but it was scripted in the film. But the point of times where we go back to the story changed as we were editing, because it also depends on actors' performances, what emotion we are at that point of. So it's there is no rule as such. What is the rule that The one thing I would say is that if you are leaving the audience at a particular point and going back in time to something, make sure you come back to where where you left. Otherwise, it becomes very disorienting, and people kind of they don't. I don't. I think they remove the emotion out of the topic at hand, and that becomes very disorienting for the viewer. Then people start thinking, what is happening? You need to come back to where you left, right? I mean, if there's a purpose, and if there's no purpose to go back, then don't go back. I mean, I don't know why people try these things, but it has to be scripted in a non-linear film. Very, very, sometimes we do try these things, but it's like a half-baked situation. It doesn't work.
It's always has to be in black and white first in order to, start it. It's on paper, it's everything is sorted.
See, Gangs of Wasseypur was supposed to be a non-linear film, right? It was, but in that case, it didn't work. It was supposed to be, the script was non-linear. So a lot of what you see in the second part, which a lot of what you see in the first part was supposed to be the prequel in the second part, right? You don't, like, for example, Faisal Khan's childhood was supposed to come in the second part, and that was a script, but it just didn't work, and hence we got it, made it linear. Imagine that one being a non-linear film. And that is one case where the script was non-linear, but we ended up making it a linear film because people were not understanding what's going on. The first pass was that, according to the script. So again, these things change. But if you're doing a non-linear film, it better be kadak in the script, for us to execute it.
Absolutely. I want to touch upon a subject, and I thought I should definitely ask you about this. So, especially after films like Animal, we are seeing. I mean, as an audience member, I feel sometimes that yes, filmmakers, storytellers, they are finding a sort of liberation when it comes to depicting violence. So, like right now, we have scenes where if someone's hand is cut, you will show it. You can show blood and gore, and you have also worked on Gangs of Wasseypur, which was again a very violent film. And by the way, one of the most natural violence that I have witnessed in films, the way the stabbing happens, the way the killings happen, they are, you feel कि हाँ, अगर कोई सच में मारेगा तो this is how a person in real life would kill someone, right? Of course, in films we have a particular staging of an action scene कि हाँ वो
Yeah.
उधर से आ रहा है, and then things happen to create that drama. But Gangs of Wasseypur felt very natural when it came to the violence portion, especially. So, how do you, as an editor, decide how much is too much? And do you also keep in mind कि अच्छा ये हम डालेंगे तो शायद सेंसर बोर्ड नहीं अप्रूव करेगा, शायद ये चीज़ कुछ ज़्यादा हो रही है, हम शायद आर रेटेड पे जा रहे हैं, हमें इसे PG-13 रखना है. आई नो मैं आई एम टॉकिंग इन अमेरिकन स्टैंडर्ड्स,
Of
बट
course, no, no,
आई एम
no,
श्योर,
no.
या आई एम
Yeah.
श्योर यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से. सो
Mm.
do you also take that call ki how much violence is too much violence, and we cannot show, there is a limit to what we can show, because ultimately what is the point of making a film that is not, approved by censor?
See, censor board ka ye ki we can't start censoring films while at the edit stage ourselves. We have to give it a chance. We need to give it a shot. Ultimately, it boils down to कि आप क्या दिखाना चाहते हो. What is the story that you're telling, right? If there is gore and blood and violence being shown, how much to show, it depends on what the story is at that point, right? I mean, if this is something you want to shock the viewer, the director wants to shock the viewer, then yes, I mean, we go ahead and do it. But if it is making the audience income uncomfortable in a very negative sense, then it becomes an issue. Like for example, there's a scene in Bhonsle, right? And the scene was shot, and it was the most uncomfortable scenes I had to edit because there's a lot of violence. I wouldn't say physical violence, but emotional violence in the scene. Now, this is one way to show, that's a very crude way of showing, and I think we and Dave and me discussed this, right? So we decided to show the violence in in this in the what do you call, the Ganpati Visarjan parts, right? So it's how you kind of show the same thing but in a very different way. We kind of transferred all the violence that happens during a rape into in that whole Ganpati Visarjan, those faces, close up of faces, the train and everything, and the sounds. So it actually kind of it had a greater effect on people than actually showing rape because it was very uncomfortable. So how much does the director also want to show? And it depends on that. It depends on the story. What is your intention? In Wasipur, it was also a little bit of, we were a little bit chalo, it's a little bit of style, it's a little bit of, the director having fun. So we cannot say ki what will the censor, even in dialogues, people take that chance. We cannot self censor films while making them. Let's leave that to the censor board. Let's give it a shot. Let's try. There have been instances where we thought, okay, this is going to get cut, but it wasn't because, on full respect, I don't think the censor board really understood it, but it got passed somehow. So that's also happened. So I don't think we should self censor anything. I mean, of course, be mindful, be responsible for sure, but and not glorify things which are not supposed to, but be responsible. But yes, if it's a part of the style of the film, then I don't think we should uh, censor and think. I never work like that. I never think about what is a censor. Of course, we do have the discussion. ये तो निकल जाएगा, but जब we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Got it. No, I was actually asking this because, like in Wasepur, in part one, there is this moment when Manoj Bajpayee's character is forcing this other character to, keep his eyes open while someone is getting slaughtered. So I was just wondering, and the camera stays on the character seeing that thing happen, and not like it is not switching between what is happening. It is only stayed on the reaction of the person who is seeing that. So I was just wondering that maybe did you guys actually think कि नहीं हम थोड़ा सा violence दिखा देते हैं, but then you were like,
Which
no, let's
scene is
just
this?
so this is in part one. I'm so sorry, I don't remember the exact moment,
No,
but
no,
it's
it's
like
okay.
Manoj Bajpayee's character is, they are inside a slaughterhouse. Manoj Bajpayee is forcing this character ki dekh, ye dekh, and he is trying to keep his eyes open, and that character is seeing some of his relatives or henchmen getting slaughtered, literally slaughtered.
Mm.
So I was just wondering कि did you guys have this cautious choice कि नहीं हम एक सेकंड भी उधर स्विच नहीं करेंगे, हम सिर्फ रिएक्शन दिखाएंगे सो दैट द ऑडियंस फील्स द टेरर, बिकॉज अगर टेरर फील करवाना ही है तो हम वो चीज होते हुए क्यों दिखाएं, लेट्स जस्ट लेट्स जस्ट कीप इट ऑन द कैरेक्टर्स रिएक्शन. सो आई वाज जस्ट वंडरिंग इफ दैट वाज द केस.
No, so keep, No, kabhi kabhi kya hota hai na, that when you are leaving it to your imagination, that becomes even more scary and wilder than what you see on screen, right? If I am only showing the reaction, the director and me are showing the reaction, then your mind is traveling in different directions and different possibilities, and it is kind of imagining the worst. Then if I cut to the violence, then शायद वो फीका पड़ जाएगा, it might not be as effective, but it's playing on your audience's imagination, and that's kind of running haywire. Anything would be happening. So I think the violence is much more when you don't show it in certain cases, of course, because everybody's imagination is different, and you have imagined the worst. I think that was the idea behind that.
Right. And you're also giving the audience, you are including the audience ki nahi, you're not giving it out, you want the audience to feel it, imagine it from their own.
Correct. Like if two people are going into a room fighting, right, and if I shut the door and I stay on the door rather than going inside and seeing what is happening, obviously your imagination is kind of, you have started creating your own story in your head, and that is far more creative than actually seeing what is going on in
Hmm. That's very true. That's very
sometimes.
true. No, no, no. That's absolutely very true. And I'm just recalling those instances where I've actually witnessed this happen in stories. And I was since I'm again, my viewers will kick me for this, but I'm a huge fan of Mad Max Fury Road, and that film is itself is an editing marvel. Margaret Sixel
Masterpiece, yeah,
has,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Margaret Sixel has, I don't know how she did it, but uh, like, so I was watching the previous Mad Max films because they have now become references, pop culture references ki we are entering a Mad Max world and all that. So I was just, and I've never watched those films, so I just kind of revisited them. And I'm not sure if you watched the previous Mel Gibson Mad Max
No,
films.
I haven't.
So
I haven't.
that's okay. So this is not a spoiler, but for the
Yeah,
purpose
it's
of this
okay.
discussion, yeah, for the purpose of this discussion, so there is this moment in the film when Mel Gibson's wife and child are literally knocked off by a bike gang. The bike riders, they are just following her first, and then they kill her. They knock her off and the baby. Now, how they've shown is the camera is here. In front of the camera, you have a road, and it's like, I don't know what location is that. On left and right, there is absolute like complete wasteland kind of a scenery, and there is this one road that is just going all through the waste, all through that area, and कैमरा के सामने सिर्फ वो रोड है, और फिर हम देखते हैं कि बाइक्स ऐसे आ रही हैं एक एक करके they're leaving the frame, and we see a small toy ball and a slipper just flying like that. We don't see them getting killed, we just see that happen. And when Mel Gibson's character is going to see, okay, what happened, it's a long shot. You don't see any blood, you don't see any blood, you just feel it, because उससे पहले एक वो shot आया था जहाँ पे that ball and that sandal just fell out of the frame while the bikes were leaving, and you don't show the girl being knocked off कि अरे उसको टक्कर लग गई तो वो she flew or whatever, the way she fell. So yeah, and like you just said, you imagine.
Yeah, you imagine. Yeah, and that's manipulating, right? Also, ek chappal gira, and you feel like, it's all manipulation. I mean, if you're showing like a terror attack somewhere and you see one teddy bear, you come on, you're not showing the actual event, but that those images, it's so powerful, and that's also scripted. A lot of it is also scripted, and sometimes it's, of course, it's edited. So, yeah, it's designed basically.
Yeah, even in
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, like when the dinosaurs come in, you first show the glass shaking, and that just
Mm.
instantly, builds that terror. You don't have to show
Correct.
the
Yeah.
dinosaur in the beginning itself. Oh, this giant, or animal, whatever is there. So yeah, that is absolutely there. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, During your days at FTI, when you were in film school, what are some of the films that you remember that left such a lasting impact on you that you ended up choosing this profession as an editor? And did you also come across certain films that made you interested in editing specifically? Because I've heard that, I'm not a film school graduate, but I've heard that Battleship Potemkin is something that is shown all the time, and that is again an editing masterpiece considering that time. So did you come across certain films, certain stories whose narratives were told in a way that made you gravitate towards editing as a career? And if yes, then we would love to know about those films.
Okay, then there are like this one. I'm supposed to give nice answers to this, but see, I chose editing as a profession. When I joined the institute, I had already chosen editing as a profession because we had to give our what do you call choice of preferences as we entered the institute. So it wasn't like certain films influenced me. बेसिकली जहाँ पे लगा कि नौकरी मिल जाएगी वहीं पे गए तो दैट्स हाउ आई वेंट इनटू एडिटिंग बाय चांस बट interestingly before I joined the institute I was like a normal audience going to watch films and all that so I was in college and there was this one film which really stood out for me and I that's the first time I asked myself okay or I thought to myself ki editing was not it was quite nice. I really enjoyed the film for the editing. Not that I thought about it on a daily basis what editing is, but it spoke to me and I was very Bollywood. I'm still Bollywood. So I think the one film that impacted me was Sarfarosh. You know, it was they. I think they completed their 25 years also recently, strangely, and that film, something about it really spoke to me in terms of the way it was paced, and it was so cool. I really thought about editing as such, but I never thought it would become my profession. When I entered the institute, that film still stayed with me. In the institute, of course, Battleship Potemkin is a Bible because what we take for granted now in terms of juxtaposing two things, two shots to create a feeling of violence or emotion, they did it back then with a lot of thought. Right now, we do it with ease because it's okay. It's like this is what it's done. But that time it was revolutionary because there was no dialogues. It was just visuals, right? And that it became like a landmark film and it still is. I mean I think people don't realize it but it was. Battleship Potemkin was one. Bicycle Thieves for me was a very close film to my heart, which I really I think impacted me as an editor. And um, and I would say also there was Bicycle Thieves was there, and Hitchcock. All of Hitchcock's films is a study in editing. It's manipulation, it's editing, it's sound. So I think, of course, they're all popular choices, I would say. But yeah, these were the things that kind of really, I think it was study in editing as such.
Right. And of course,
Yeah.
we have the infamous, like you talked about Hitchcock, so the Psycho scene, where
Yeah.
yeah, more than 50 cuts.
I, 50 cuts, sound design, yeah, sound design. Who would have thought that stabbing a watermelon would, create the same fleshy human sound of, a human being stabbed? I mean, these are things you try out, and, and it's like passion speaking there. Now we take things for granted, things are available to us, resources are available to us, but to actually try out something like that, if you think back, it's revolutionary.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, that's
Yeah.
there. So you are in a state of making that choice of what to be shown and what not to be shown to an audience. So, but then there are different, let's just say, governing bodies, groups, ideologies that also have their own choices of what should be shown and what not to be shown. So, in your profession, how do you deal with this? Because we recently saw what happened with Monkey Man.
Hmm.
So, if has this situation ever come across in your career so far, and if yes, then how did you deal with it?
As in, sorry, I didn't get the question though. How, what?
So the thing is that I feel that right now there is, like you said, that you don't censor what you do. There is no self censorship. But when you think of, but when stories reach theaters, there is always this pushback from people, from groups, from some governing bodies to, because then they take the decision कि नहीं ये नहीं दिखा सकते आप. But I feel that you are in a state where you have that choice कि okay, this will be shown and this is not something to be shown. But then once the film goes out, then there are these external factors that decide, that make that choice. So I would love to know your thoughts on this, ki, because since you are someone who is spearheading the very nature of showing
Yeah.
and not showing something.
See, again, like I said, we don't. I prefer not to. The filmmakers I work with, and we prefer not to censor anything at the edit table. लेकिन आगे जाके जब वो कट जाता है you feel it's there are other bodies deciding what to show, what not to show. It's extremely frustrating. And given the society and the situation that we are surrounded with right now, nothing seems to be like passing through. You're not able to make any film the way you want to. Now I'm not saying be irresponsible and do what you want, but even with the little bit of the story that we have to say, and if you want to go beyond a certain comfortable thought process or an idea, it's very difficult to make anything. And it's quite sad that we are already talking about censorship from the beginning while scripting itself, which is which is quite sad state of affairs. Of course it is frustrating, but I think we should continue doing what we can and push responsibly where we can, because who knows, hopefully one day, things will just kind of, people might not understand and it might just pass through. I mean, it all depends. Yeah, it's like it is frustrating when somebody else has to decide for you. But having said that, we all always know the risk. As an editor, we know the risk that okay, this is there, but we have a plan B for that. We are always kind of thinking about ye katega, so we have plan B for that. There are sometimes ridiculous things, you don't know what to cut. You can't, like, for example, in one film, I remember Hasi To Fasi, yaar, come on, it's a harmless film, a rom-com. Usme kya katega? Usme they cut a word out called, they didn't want a cobbler to be called Mochi. Now, Mochi, we're not, of course, demeaning the profession. It's like Mochi is a Mochi, the cobbler. What else we have to mute those dialogues? I think even I remember Billu Barber was supposed to be Billu Barber, then they can't say Barber, they call it Billu. I mean, these are things which now there's no end to it. When people start nitpicking, and so again, there has to be a balance. But more often than not, we always have a plan B. We cut it. We have a plan, like a cut B ready in case a sensor doesn't pass that. So sometimes the sensor board shocks us. अरे ये कैसे निकल गया? How, and they seem to enjoy it also. I mean, it's fine. Okay, with a little disclaimer. Chalo, good. And sometimes they come and they pick on the most random things. You know, so it's very unpredictable. We thought Newton will obviously have a huge sensor issue, but it went without any cuts. It was shocking. So it depends on who's watching the film at that point and what mode they are in. It's not up to us.
So there is this looming sense of unpredictability associated, like when you enter this field and when you try to tell your stories. So I think one has to keep that in mind as well, that sometimes you will not be you might actually be restricted for when it comes to telling the story that you want to tell.
See, it's both ways. You might be restricted in telling the story that you want to say. At the same time, you might be telling a story that you're uncomfortable showing. You might not believe in that ideology. Yet you are in this situation. Of course, you read the script before saying yes to a lot of things, but sometimes when you are working on a certain project, you realize, okay, this is not the way it was written in the script. It's playing out completely differently. Then you realize that this is not the ideology and this is not your perspective on the situation. Yet now you have to do your job the best possible way. So it's both ways can be tricky. You are in a situation where you don't necessarily, your ideologies don't kind of, you know, run alongside with what is shown on screen. It is completely opposite to what you think. Now that's a very tough situation to be in. And then you kind of do your work the best possible way, or you find a way out. So, yeah.
Got it. Got it. Lastly, I would just like to know if there are any tools that you would love to share that help you ease out your workflow whenever you are working on different projects.
See, when what keeps me together is a good team at hand and a good, like, you know, energy in the office or wherever I am. You know, it's that is, I think, the biggest tool one can have. And if there's a tool I would desire to make my work easier and give it like the justice, is time. Unfortunately, nowadays editors don't get the time to, you know, do um, the work the way they would like to. You know, everything is instant. Everything needs to be delivered yesterday. It doesn't work like that. You know, the deadlines are quite crazy. So that is one tool I would desire. Some kind of, you know, time and patience from the makers, but that is not there. But having said that, it's always the energy of people, be it on set, be it in the studio, wherever you are. I think that is the most important tool you can have to work. So, of course, you have your software tools and all, but I think the biggest tool is the people around you and the and yeah, that aids you.